In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. That was said by none other than MLK. And the reason I chose him was because my speech is really going to be zoning in on the influences of public speakers and how powerful their words can be. I want to inform you of that power that they have while they're talking to an audience just like this, and how impactful their words can be, like I said. I've done my research and I'm talking about this topic from prior knowledge from history classes and even English classes when we talked about speeches on their own. Being an influential speaker takes more than ideas. It takes hours of preparation, dedication, and finding people that are willing to listen to those words that you have. First, I'm going to talk about how influential a person can be with the right type of vocal delivery. Then I'm going to use my first example of Martin Luther King, and then I'm going to close with my last example of Adolf Hitler to show you the drastic differences in speaking. So like I said, my first point of view is going to be the influences that people have on speaking and the power of speech itself. In our textbook, Public Speaking, an Audience-Centered Approach, it talks about the 4 aspects of vocally delivering a speech. And those 4 aspects are volume, pronunciation, dialect, and articulation. When you use these 4 aspects of a vocal delivery, it really enhances how the people take in your speech, and it really gets through to the audience on what you're saying, what your ideas are, and how you're presenting them. When you move your voice, whether it's your tone and just how high you raise it or how much emphasis you put on a certain word, it really gets through to the people on why you're talking about this topic. And then the second point for the power of speech is the sense of urgency, or the call to action that most speeches have. When you hear a speech, in my examples that I'm going to show you though, but when you hear a speech, they always end with what they want you to do, whether it's that call to action or that sense of urgency that they use. They use that so that way they can get action out of you. Those words are for you to be the ones to make the change or do that action. I'm going to move on to my second topic, and that is my first example of a public speaker, which I said was Martin Luther King. So, as we all know, Martin Luther King was a speaker for the civil rights movement, and he was the one who wanted to see change the most for those people. And the way that he spoke was from more of a tragic speech to a comedical speech, because he wanted to get that point across. He used tragedy during the beginning of his career because he wanted people to see what was going on. He wanted them to really take in the tragedy that was happening and see that push and progressive action. And then he went to a more comedic because he was starting to see that change, and it really got to him and it made him happy, so he started doing more comedical to get more people to lighten up about the situation, so that way they would really do that action. In Western Journal of Communication, written by Edward Appel, he changed his speeches, as we can see, and the impact that he had was because of that sense of urgency during his tragic speeches. And now my last example is Adolf Hitler. Again, as we all know, that he's a very bad guy, but the way that he really talked got to his people. He was more of a charismatic speaker than he was like Martin Luther King, more tragic or comedic. In Business Insider, written by Amanda Macias, he wrote over 5,000 speeches as motivation to get people to carry out his ideas and his plans. His charismatic persona really helped him get those people to carry out what he wanted, not to mention the hardships and the despair that people were feeling from the loss of the war. It really amped up his ability to get people to listen. But what really got through to the people was how he was able to deliver those speeches with his persona. So I talked to you guys about how to be a public speaker and how your words can influence a person. Then I talked about my examples of both Martin Luther King and Hitler. An influential speaker is more than someone who can just sit here and talk and get people to listen. It's just about how you use those words to see the change that you want. And you need to know if those words are for good or for worse. So with that being said, I want to leave you guys with this. If you want to be the one to make the change, make sure to ask yourself if these words you're using are for better or if they're for worse. Thank you.